Now, this is the second video of God has shown me. In the summer of 2010, in the month of May, I had a powerful celestial encounter that changed my life forever. All my world's view has capsized, and my beliefs were shredded in just one go. That was the apocalyptic vision that broke down my resistance to God and made me abandon Islam forever, turning me into a Christian. I was walking along the equator at almost 1 p.m. in the afternoon, so under a bright sunlight. I could see the whole world from North Pole to the South Pole, from Japan to Hawaii, USA, and all of a sudden, heavy dark clouds covered the sky, and shortly afterwards, those clouds spread out, displaying majestic celestial images of angels, like giant billboards measuring about 75 meters high for about 50 yards wide. Those images were in high definition, and I needed no glasses to see them. All mankind could see them as I was seeing them. About a couple of minutes later, those images faded out, and they were replaced by 5 giant letters in Hebrew. Each letter measured about 75 meters high for about 50 meters wide. I could not read the scriptures since I do not know any Hebrew alphabet. All mankind could see those scriptures in the skies at the same time. Then I heard the sounds of a loud trumpet that blew once, twice, 3, 4, 5, and 6 times. There was no 7th trumpet, just 6 of them. All mankind heard what I heard. After the trumpets had blown, I heard, and the whole of humanity heard it too, a mighty voice from heaven, saying that this was the day of the Lord, that the day of the Lord had come. Then this was the day of reckoning that had been foretold. The voice from heaven added that this was the treatment of St. Petersburg, a notion that I am yet to comprehend. At that fateful moment, I lost all consciousness of the fact that I was born to a woman. I forgot the idea of having had a father in the world or a spouse. I had even forgotten the very existence of all of my children just in a split second. My memory was erased. Society, as we know it, had ceased to exist. And I was only concerned about my soul. How do I get saved now that the world had come to an end? That was my question and my only concern. I did not think about my mom's fate, nor about my dad's fate, nor even about my wife's fate, nor did I worry about my children's fate. I was preoccupied with the destiny of my own selfish soul. And at that critical moment, I understood that the angels of God had been given a dire order to destroy the world and all life within 4 minutes. The wrath of God was on us, and there was no way escaping the punishment. They obeyed the divine order by throwing around lightning among the crowds all over the world, killing indiscriminately men, women, children, the elderly, and the sick. Lightning was crisscrossing the earth. I saw breastfeeding young moms throwing away their infants like stones before fleeing for their lives. I saw sons and daughters tossing their elderly parents before fleeing for their lives. Doctors were running for their lives, leaving behind the sick and the stricken in hospitals. No human being cared for another. It was sheer despair, total and utter destruction on earth. Mankind was literally lost. Some people were fleeing the lightning, and yet they were falling in giant holes, due to gigantic earthquakes swallowing them. Some would flee the earthquake here, and they will fall into, they will be washed away over there by an enormous flooding. Some would flee the flooding and fall into a landslide that would not, and they wouldn't be seen again. It was chaos. It was utter hopelessness, as the world had never seen before. Mankind was screaming everywhere. Some were wailing or crying. Some were gnashing their teeth. No one on earth at that time remembered Jesus or any other prophet or religion for that matter. Nobody even thought of praying. It seems too late to even pray to God. I remained very calm amid such terror and utter distractions. I thought to myself that there was no need to panic nor to flee, and that I thought that no one could possibly escape the wrath of God. Moreover, death was finding people everywhere, so I chose to walk calmly, heading north. Destruction was all around me. Death was all around me. Lightning was striking people millimeters away from me without touching me. It was surreal, just like those Western movies where the hero is being fired upon by many enemies, and yet no single bullet will hit them. I did not comprehend why I was being spared or missed by all those divine ammunitions falling from heaven. I eventually reached the north, a smaller place where I could only see 3 men. They were happy, having a laugh, and they had nothing to worry about. They were alive. And even though I could see no wall separating me from them, I knew in my spirit that there was a sort of divide between us, that there was some kind of invisible wall, some kind of obstacle that I could not possibly cross. So I knew I couldn't join them to escape the terror on earth. But among those 3 characters, I recognized an evangelical pastor. And he told the other 2, I know this man. He is my friend. Let us join us. The others told him that that would not happen, as being his friend did not qualify me to join them. And my pastor friend said to them, he accepted Jesus as his personal Lord and Savior. The other 2 replied, if that is the case, let him confess it himself. And my friend then encouraged me to accept Jesus as indicated. Since I was a Muslim, it was very hard for me to admit that Jesus was my Lord, because Muslims believe Jesus is a mere prophet of God, and that calling him Lord was an unforgivable sin that would land me in hell. Yet I could see people dying down below on earth, and I had no other choice since I wanted to save my soul. I did say mildly with my lips, but not with my heart, that I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And at that time, I saw a narrow gate as high as about 30 inches high and 10 inches wide. No one told me, but I knew in my spirit that the condition for me to be saved was to walk through that narrow gate. And I should not crawl through it. I could not squeeze my body through it. I had to walk with my head held high. It was impossible. My friend urged me then to say it again with all of my heart. And I tried once more, louder, but I did not accept it deep down. So the door just enlarged dramatically enough to reach about 20 inches wide and 5 feet high. I still couldn't go through it. And my friends asked me one more time, you see, you can do it. Try harder and with all of your heart, say it. And I tried one more time. And this time, I said it loud and clear. And my heart had accepted it. I said, I accept Jesus as my personal Lord and Savior. And I walked through the gate, well, towards the gate, and I approached it. The gate kept moving back, just like a living gate, widening and increasing its height to accommodate me. Eventually, it was as high as 7 feet and as wide as 1 yard. And I found myself among the 3 other characters, and then I was standing with them. And they did ask me, do you know what's happening on earth? I said, sure. I can see people, scores of people dying in the hundreds of millions. I can see them dying of a very violent death. And they said, you are quite misled. They are not just dying physically, but they are dying spiritually. They are all heading to hell. And I went, is it possible for so many multitudes of people to be thrown into hell at once? Is that possible? And they answered, sure, they are going to hell. And that is the destiny of all those who have failed to accept Jesus as their personal Lord and Savior. Later on, when I read the Bible, a few months later, it's written, and I was mesmerized to read this. In Matthew 7, Jesus had talked about the narrow gate. About 2,000 years earlier, he did say this. Matthew 7, verse 13, he did say, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. Verse 14, but small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. In Matthew 24, Jesus said again, how, from verse 19, how dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your plight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath. Verse 21, for then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If these days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At this time, if any man says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or there he is, do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you ahead of time. So if anyone tells you, there he is, out in the wilderness, do not go out. Or, here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then all the peoples on earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send the angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. That is exactly what I have seen in that dream. And that dream meant I had to quit Islam for good and become a Christian. Thank you.